Hey guys, how's it going, Companion? Today I want to talk about how the arena will change, what it will look like after the Grand Tournament hits. And there are a few indicators of this, and when it comes to talking about any big topic, I try to do my research. I try to get all the opinions of everyone else who has some kind of relevant voice on the topic. So in this particular case, I want to cite a video which I'll include in the description below, which is from ADWCTA, and he talks about some of the things that might change in Arena, how they changed in the past, and largely how warriors have been very suppressed, as they have almost since the start of Hearthstone been by far the worst arena class. So there is a little bit of that, but there are some very interesting points of this topic, as well as I think most people so far have not actually portrayed what Arena will be like after TGT. Now there are a few elements here. I want you guys to understand that Arena right now is basically a game of tempo, largely. Of course, when you draft a deck, you might get a deck that does something else. You might make a control deck. You might just make like a YOLO face deck if you get a lot of cards that just go through direct damage. And the reason we've kind of got to this point is because creatures are harder to kill. Usually, to kill a creature, you can't just do a certain amount of damage to it because something else will happen when it dies. It'll pop some other creature, something else, basically. And this kind of follows by, you can't really kill one creature with one swing of a weapon in a lot of cases. The other is that there are very few mechanics or very few cards that actually clear multiple creatures at the same time. So cards like Flame Strike are really famous. They're really notorious for being the kings of Arena. But they're really powerful because they're rare. It's not many classes that have the opportunity to get cards like these. So because those are rare, and because creatures are harder to kill, the way that you win in Arena is typically you get a 1-drop, then a 2-drop, then a 3-drop, then a 4-drop. And your ability to consistently draft a deck that allows you to draw this as consistently as possible while using primarily common cards makes a class in Arena strong. That is why certain classes are stronger than others. They can more reliably get that, and maybe, Mage is still probably the best class because you have some very powerful niche but common cards like Flame Strike. So in TGT, a few things change. I kind of want to go over some of the cards that will change so you guys can get a little bit where I'm coming from here. Again, in Arena, the rarity is extremely important. So if we go back and talk about, the best card in TGT, it's Varian. But Varian is a legendary. So it affects warriors basically a negligible amount. I mean like 0.0 something negligible. Like Varian is not even the best legendary in Arena because warriors struggle from no consistent board clears, very poor card quality, very poor common cards, very poor class common cards, and a real crap hero ability. So all these things combined means that it's ever so important that you don't miss out on any creature drops. So you actually have to draft a lower curve deck than the other classes to compete, which makes Variant a piece of crap, and it makes it so on turn 10, if you bring them out, it probably won't even do anything. So cards like Dr. Broom are way better, and I would assume there's probably like a dozen other legendaries that are just around about as good as Varian. So that and the fact that you'll basically never get him because it's a legendary. Because you get Warrior, you draft the cards, like 1 in 4 or 5 decks, you'll get a legendary. And it's probably not going to be this one because there's quite a few of them. So common cards are what dictate what is good in Arena. Rare cards have some relevance, so let's look at those. In TGT, these are just what I think are the most powerful rare cards in terms of arena play. Druids get the aspirant, the ability to accelerate mana and have a pretty good body. That's a pretty damn good card. I actually think Savage Combatant is extremely good because if you can stabilize with this creature out on the board, you'll probably get an extreme amount of value. Hunters get Power Shot, which puts them in a really nice place. That card makes it so they can come back from being behind on a board very early on. So rather than taking a lot of damage, hoping you can survive until a later turn, which most board clears are late game, you can play this out and maybe even play another creature to take back the tempo completely. Shamans get Thunder Bluff Valiant, which I think will be an extremely powerful card just because it's extremely high value. It acts as like kind of a big creature, but spread across your totems. The totems become more threatening, so a very interesting dynamic. Also, Draenei Totem Carver I think is just, pretty damn good. I mean, Arena is a world where Frostwolf Warlord is a good card, so Draenei Totem Carver is arguably a little bit better. And it's a little bit better in a situation where, I mean, Frostwolf is really, really good in a Shaman deck. In terms of the common cards, these are the most relevant cards. Keep that in mind. Rogues get the Shadowpan Rider. This card is absolutely insane. You probably don't even need to combo it, but if you can combo it, I think it'll be pretty tough to lose that game if your opponent can't immediately remove your creature. And, well, it's not easy to do. They might have like some kind of hard removal, maybe like a Hex, but if they don't have that, you should be in extremely good shape. Paladins get the Murloc Knight, which I think is a very powerful card in Arena. Sometimes just a 4 health guy is good enough on turn 4. Sometimes you can like coin out a True Silver on 3, protect him with that, and proceed to win a game fairly decisively. Seal of Champions, I think, is one of the best Arena cards in the set. It's a common card. It allows you to swing tempo in a really big way, and as I've established, Arena is already a fairly tempo-driven game. And then we have Warhorse Trainer, which is a pretty good card in the early game, and I would guess a really good card in the late game. The late game usually involves the Paladin popping out his hero power as often as he can to gain enough value, and if you by the end of that have quite a few dudes, you can play this guy to get a really nice trade. So it's just pretty good all around. Hunters get the Bear Trap, which is quite nice, and they get King's Elec. King's Elec is just, consistency-wise, you need a lot of 2-drops. This is a 2-drop that can get you another card in your hand. It's also a beast, so it acts as an activator for a lot of the other cards that you might be likely to draft into. And yeah, it's a common, so very, very powerful card. Shamans get Totem Golem, which of course is insane in Arena. Outside of Flame Cannon, Totem Golem is just going to mess everything up. Tuskar Totemic, of course, another pretty good card. Tuskar Totemic might be a bit tough to analyze because you don't always get things like Flame Tongue Totem that buffs your other totems. So Tuskar Totemic is often going to get like a really crap totem, and it's not going to do anything. But, I think the average result is that this card is better than average. So my point is that these classes will receive an improvement compared to their current position in the meta, in Arena at least. Mage, I think, gets worse cards overall. You have to keep in mind that when you add this many cards to the pool, it makes the existing cards that are good less frequent. So Mage is not as powerful as it was before TGT. And the classes I mentioned are going to be more powerful. So Paladin was pretty close to Mage. It seems like Paladin might be like almost equal to Mage, but I still feel personally that Mage is probably still number 1. Rogue gets a little bit of a boost, just the 1 card, and Hunter and Shaman get a big boost. Shamans have been just known as fairly inconsistent Arena classes, so the consistency for Shamans should have a huge jump because they get so many powerful cards. And Hunter's kind of the same, also very powerful Arena class, but it's just somewhat unlikely that you get a reasonable deck. So that's what you can expect on the high end. And when we really look into the low end, which of course, as I cited at the start of the video, which is Warriors, we get to see some of the more depressing things, so you guys can understand maybe more of this whole Arena world and how changes might impact certain classes and why things happen and why things, I guess in this case, really don't make much sense. So, Warriors. Warriors have been the worst Arena class for a while now, and it has largely been due to the fact that over the course of the expansions, they've received some really crap cards. In Naxxramas, they got Death's Bite, which was one of the best cards ever. But in Naxxramas, everyone got a lot of the other cards. Everyone got all these cards that are just difficult to kill. So overall, the Warriors was kind of about neutral, because the weapons are kind of bad when you have to use the same weapon on one card twice. So that really sucks. In GVG, Warriors got Ogre Wormhole and Warbot, which are both absolutely abysmal arena cards. And also to keep in mind, websites like Hearth Arena, websites that kind of have some kind of gauge for how good cards are. In GVG, the other classes received cards so good, they had to change their rating system to increase the maximum cap of how good a card could be. And when Warriors get cards that are just objectively crap, and other classes get cards that they have to raise the limit of the rating system to appropriately assess how good the cards are, you kind of understand what we're talking about, okay? In Blackrock Mountain, Warriors got Axe Flinger. Yep. And in TGT, as far as the commons, again, which are the most important cards, Warriors get Bash, which is basically a bad, like, Dark Bomb. And there's a card that's better than Dark Bomb. It's called Quick Shot. So Warriors just get crap, basically. They got Ogremar Aspirant, which is crap, basically. The reason it's crap is not just because the card sucks, which it does, but it's also because an Inspire trigger on a Warrior is much, much worse than an Inspire trigger on another class. And we'll talk about this in a second. And of course, Warriors got the biggest insult to arena cards that I have ever seen, Bolster. I actually think Bolster is the single worst card in the game when it comes to arena. If you draft arena constantly, you will soon realize that about an average deck will have 1 to 2 taunt creatures. So Bolster is basically a bad Mark of the Wild that can only target like a tenth of your deck. That is an insult for this card to be common. And that kind of brings me to the point that some people have started to realize. That Blizzard, it seems like Blizzard just absolutely doesn't give a shit about the balance of arena. The only thing they really take into consideration is constructed play. Constructed play requires a lot of balance, so it's fair that they assess a lot of time in that direction. But the very interesting thing is that arena takes so little balance. The balance of arena really only has to do with making cards that are pretty good by themselves. Cards like things that resemble Yetis are pretty good by themselves. You want to make cards like that when they're given to classes common, and you want to make cards that either combo with other cards, require a very specific scenario. You make those cards epic. When it comes to dictating the rarity for constructed, it seems pretty arbitrary. So why not actually have a reason to make cards, rare or less rare based on the balance of arena play? Wow, mind-blowing, right? So I'll give you guys a very direct example. So we have Bolster, which is the biggest insult to arena ever, as a common card. Mind blown, right? I actually think these websites that rank arena cards based on point systems would have to attribute a negative value for Bolster, because I think if you draw any other card in the entire game, on average, it will be better than Bolster, right? That's how bad it is. And if you compare it to like Sea Reaver, which is an epic card, okay? So Bolster, you're going to see a lot of Bolsters. You're not going to see many Sea Reavers. They're both terrible, but Sea Reaver is much, much, much less terrible because you can play that card. Even though it still sucks in arena, it's decent. You can play it. Here's the idea, right? Why not make Sea Reaver a common card and Bolster an epic card, right? Look, it's so easy. It's the easiest thing ever. What that'll do is, Warriors won't run into and have to pick garbage because they'll have Bolster, Wisp, and like another piece of garbage. They won't be forced into picking garbage because all their options are garbage. They'll actually maybe get to pick a Sea Reaver once in a while, which is still pretty bad, but it's not going to have that much of a negative impact on their deck. And when they get an epic card, well, they just won't pick Bolster, right? So simple. And for constructed play, you'd probably even sell more packs because Bolster as a card is probably going to have some people wanting to maybe try it in some very niche decks. People aren't going to play Sea Reaver anyway, so might as well put that at common, right? So that's kind of my point. Warrior is really crap. Blizzard has been really negligent to attributing rarities to specific cards in terms of arena balance. Warriors in Constructed do really well because of combos. You do not play the combo game in Arena. They have not taken any account or any kind of motion to change that. Also, the other mechanics in the game don't really work with Warrior that they're just now introducing. So when it comes to jousting, I just mentioned how Warriors, it's harder for them to carve out properly because if they miss a drop, they lose because their hero power is so bad. So armoring up is fine in general if you're going to die, but in a tempo-driven game, putting 2 armor on your character is 0 tempo. Putting like a 1/1 on the board or pinging something for 1, that actually affects the board state. So the warrior hero power is absolutely, without a doubt, the worst hero power in Arena. So when you have an expansion that's based around people jousting, well, warriors can't really joust that much because, you know, they have to have a lower curve deck for it to be more consistent. So cards with joust, warriors will lose more on average than every other class in Arena. And cards with inspire effects, like take a look at Silverhand Regent. Really good card. For warriors, less good than every other class in Arena, because the incentive to use your hero power as a warrior is much worse than any other class in Arena. So not only have warriors been shunned for basically the entire history of Hearthstone for Arena, they got the worst card ever for Arena in the common slot, no less. They still got garbage. They got absolutely no help. And the 2 mechanics that are introduced in the expansion have the least effect on warriors in Arena among all the classes. So, yeah. That's where we're at. Maybe now that I've kind of made things a bit clear, maybe people can talk about it. Maybe there can be some more understanding. Maybe things can change in the future. But, yeah. I really have a lot of fun when I play Warriors in Arena. I just hate to get punished so badly, and even more with each expansion. Oh well, guess I'll play Shaman this time around. Hope you guys enjoyed my rant, and I'll see you guys.